Today I had a conversation with one of the channel members about the philosophy of mathematics, or perhaps the metaphysics of mathematics, or what have you. And we went into a discussion about the nature of a point. When you're learning Cartesian style logic, this Cartesian coordinate system, you learn how to plot points. And points are really weird because they have zero dimensions, yet they occupy an exact position. In following this logic, it can be seen that something can have a position yet not occupy space. So, this concept of position or location and space aren't synonymous. Or to put it in simpler terms, something can be located outside of space. This is literally the case with a point. And when it comes to metaphysics, this whole idea of trying to understand what reality is, what's going on here, you inevitably confront mind. This thing that we believe we possess, but the further you go into this rabbit hole, that doesn't appear to be the case. Mind is some kind of non-local phenomenon that we are all participating in. You could say that we are inside of the part of mind that we call space, or to put it more accurately, space-time. I guess that's what we call it today. But there's something that we overlook. There is a perspective that we don't normally take when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff. And when it comes to a point is syntax. It is the beginnings of language. I mean, mathematics is a language, but when we talk about language, we really don't know what we mean when we say that. What is a language? What is language? Language is communication. It is information exchange. And that's what a point is. It is some kind of intersection, some kind of interplay. It is where two things come and exchange information with each other. It is this interplay that serves as the ground for understanding reality. This is ultimately, as someone mentioned in one of my comment sections, information looking at other information. Mathematics is a language that we try and use to describe reality, just like the language that I'm using now. What's the difference between the letter A and the number 2? This idea of quantity. A quantity is just another way of trying to describe things that you see in reality. And language is any system, any given system is a language. All language is interplay. It is interaction. In physics, they call it measurement. When you take a measurement, you collapse the wave function. And since language is interaction, it is communication, then what does that say about nature? This force that is in constant communication with itself at all times. It implies that reality is made of language. People say that I remind them of Terence McKenna, and this was his whole spiel. And speaking of which, I don't see the resemblance, but it would be pretty funny if Terence McKenna was reincarnated as above black man. But all jokes aside, I do find this concept of language fascinating. It is really pretty much what we've always heard when it comes to this whole woo-woo mystical nonsense, that it is energy, vibes. That's what language is. It is some kind of vibration that stimulates thought. That's the best way to put it. It is some kind of thought-provoking energy. They cannot be detangled, thought and this vibration. Points don't exist in space. They don't exist in our normal reality. You can look around and never find one. We keep trying to find the point, and we're down to this Planck scale. But, the jury's still out on all of this stuff. What a point really is, it represents something. It represents something akin to thought. It is like a little BB of thought. It is the smallest thought possible that you can begin to use to describe reality. When talking about thought, it all circles back to mind, this thing that we believe we possess. But it appears that thought is the true fundamental building blocks of reality. That's what everything is made up of. It is all ultimately thought. Someone asked me about Gnosticism. This is the Gnostic proposition that this is all thought thinking itself, or information looking at other information. And for me, if you are a follower of my channel, I've talked about all of this extensively. I have really gone into the weird, wacky metaphysics of this on this channel. And I believe that I really get more into the heart of all of it over on Paramount, which is, my website where I sort of host the core of my metaphysics. The thing that I'm really trying to understand, and I guess this is what most philosophers worth their salt really try to untangle, probably to their own peril, is trying to figure out what thought is. What exactly is it? Whenever you try and open up a number and see what's inside, or open up a decision, as I mentioned in my previous video, and see what this interaction is made of, you find the unexplainable. You're essentially trying to explain language with language, and you fall into this circular loop that you can't escape from. And it appears obvious that consciousness, if you want to call it that, or this thing that generates language, cannot be uttered. It cannot be described using language. And it appears that this entire enterprise of difference, we call it everything that takes place after the Big Bang, but this whole world we live in of difference is some kind of reflective surface. It is information bouncing around trying to see itself. It is consciousness trying to pull its own mask off and see what it is. It kind of reminds me, The Flash. There was this part in The Flash where he's running so fast that he can reach out and touch the back of his own head. We are doing something like that. Even me sitting in this park, there is just this constant information exchange that is going on where everything is trying to identify everything else. It is ultimately a process of identification. That was a squirrel. But perhaps that is my cue to wrap this video up. I wanted this to be short and just to get on here and chit chat with all of you. If you are really into the mind splitting metaphysics of this, I really have videos that are more scripted, and I just dive into all of this stuff over on Paramount. That is pretty much where the majority of my metaphysics is housed, or that's where its home is. I just saw that YouTube wasn't an appropriate place to try and put that kind of work. This is first and foremost an entertainment platform. The goal here is to keep you on as long as possible, and you take that as you may. But that's it. I'm done ranting. I'm going to sign off, and I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. I am still just experimenting with this channel and what I ultimately want to do and what I want to talk about. So until next time, y'all have a blessed day.